Hi everyone and welcome to Words That Matter. My name's Vanessa Douglas-Savage and I'm joined today by Mike Lafford, our New South Wales State Director. Hi Mike, how are you?
Hi, I'm great, thanks, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. Oh, Vanessa, everyone has their own view, definition, and great stories around their transformation experience. Let's start there. What is it in your mind? Transformation. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, look, great question, Mike. Really good question. And I think what comes to mind for most people is that brand new big bang project where you're making a major change. It's going to impact every part of your business, and typically involves a really heavy IT implementation. So a brand new project brand new system, that talks about delivering new ways of working. And those things absolutely are transformational, but we don't do those very often, hopefully. I think the undersold transformation projects, though, are really the ones where you're just changing one little element of every day going forward. And so when you look back over 12 or 18 months, you suddenly realize actually this project has transformed every single thing about the job that we're currently doing. And we've not really noticed it the whole way through. And if we've been successful, we've not noticed it and it's all been positive. But sometimes those projects are the ones that are actually problematic because they've introduced unintended consequences. And they've changed some things that we didn't mean to change or we didn't manage through the process. And we end up having to undo them down the track. Teams, I think, is a classic example. So Teams pre-COVID, I am the first to admit I was not a fan. I was like, what do we need this thing for? This thing is stupid. Come a global pandemic, it turns out Teams is pretty handy, and it's found its niche in the world. But from that unintended consequences side of things, what do we do with our existing, collaboration tools? Now, we've still got a couple hanging around in our business, for example, and I know clients that have got the same challenge of, well, what do we do with the information we had in those places? And also, because it's a Microsoft product and it's about 78% perfect, which means it's just a couple of niggles to iron out in the implementation, there's some technical debt that we've accumulated either through unintended SharePoint sites, not properly applying permissions or identities or classifications to data that's actually stored in Teams that does actually have to be attended to moving forward. So that's my opinion of what transformation projects are. And they sound really easy when you talk about them like this. They're not easy when you're in the middle of them. I certainly appreciate that. And often these projects lose momentum because we start out with such optimism where our optimism bias kicks into overdrive. But Mike, from your experience, you've seen a lot of projects though, get through that first hurdle and then suddenly slow down, potentially not progress. What are some of the causes of the transformational projects losing momentum?
Good question, Vanessa. And I'm inclined as well to think that this is not really just, transformation projects, but certainly in a lot of cases, this what I'm going to share really applies to any real project or program of work in an organization. Doesn't really have to be purely aligned to just transformation. I think, look, if we look at Project Management 101, some of those key themes where momentum can be lost. Let's start at the top of the organization. Executive sponsorship. What if your executives change? We talked about macroeconomic changes in COVID. In some cases, executives change and migrate between organizations, leave or even retire in some cases. So losing executive sponsorship of a key transformation program is often key because that creates uncertainty or doubt around current focus and the value in the organization. Again, looking at a hierarchy here as well. The business strategy, technology strategies, where is the business now heading? Again, that alignment then can create some gaps sometimes if there's a change at the top of the organization, a change to business models, mergers and acquisitions, this type of activity within the business. Businesses typically don't stand still. Pre or post COVID, that there's always a natural evolution. So ensuring that that business alignment is still tight is critical to avoid losing momentum. I'm sure there's a lot of experienced project people on this session, so you'll all know resourcing or value delivery and funding. Almost a holy trinity of good program management about outcomes. So again, owing to issues with revenue and those macroeconomic conditions changing and evolving so rapidly, is your project at risk because of the funding that's now available to that? People will always be an important factor in what we do in technology, despite the great advances in automation. So, making sure you've got the budget and the resources is always important. But if you can't deliver value or an outcome as part of your program in 2 to 3 months, I think there's something here as well that now needs to be looked at in terms of, should we go through a portfolio management exercise? Should that initiative be suspended or resequenced? Sometimes it's not just a question of stopping things. We'll cover that, a little bit of that later on, but can we just resequence things or temporarily suspend programs? Because if we can be clear on what our top 3 or 4 initiatives are, that can help us focus on delivering that value, delivering that outcome, and doing that over a much shorter time frame.
Look, and I couldn't agree more, Mike, with that one. I think, taking that pause and that time to pause, we're really afraid to do it. And most businesses are afraid, because what does that mean? Does that mean then that I've done the wrong thing by starting this project? Whereas, we wouldn't hesitate to pause, for example, in a training regime that we've put in place for our own physical development. We wouldn't hesitate to pause if that's what we needed to do. And we just don't take that same approach to projects in organisations, I think.
No, that's right, Vanessa. I think also, as we've seen over time, different approaches to delivery models in technology projects. I think also there's time to evolve our PMO frameworks, our steering committees, our investment boards and prioritization processes. Yes, I'm talking about that horrible G word, governance. Because again, it's not really a set and forget approach. It's important that we can continue to evolve those governance models. Who are the people that need to be involved in decision making? Who's empowered to reprioritize and resequence things? And what is the approach to investment? Involving the business in these key decisions in the search of delivering better outcomes.
And of course, Mike, all of these things rely on having the right information and data to actually understand what your project's trying to achieve. Having those mappings back to your strategic objectives, knowing exactly which resources you need and who you've got allocated, all of those pieces of information, which is an area that I know that we're particularly passionate about at GWI.
Yes, absolutely. I think having the right data and information to make decisions is obviously pretty core here. And as new transformation projects are set up, it's important that people understand, how can some of the newer technologies and platforms around AI and RPA, what role do they play in supporting digital transformation, augmenting information sources, and then also achieving scale, speed, and hopefully removing some of those more mundane labour tasks as well. Again, given that we're looking, to drive some efficiency here and protect ourselves from key people risks in some cases.
Absolutely, Mike, absolutely.
I'm touching on the people side there. That's something, Vanessa, obviously that's really important as well. Good programs of work don't often succeed without the right people with the right capability and skills. What are your observations there in that space?
I think we underestimate in particular the breadth of skills that you need in these digital transformation projects. I think sometimes it's easy just to focus on the tech skills that you need. And like you mentioned, Mike, tech skills at the moment are at a premium. For whatever reason, we're all on the digital bandwagon and there just aren't enough people to support it. But it's all those adjacent skills that I think we underestimate: the procurement skills, the contract management skills, business analysis, communication, actually just time to spend time with people, because at the end of the day, that's what our organisations are, is they're a group of people all working together. And so any sort of digital transformation project absolutely has to take that into account.
Right. As I mentioned earlier, I think I'd certainly add there that as you drive and refresh your transformation portfolio, are these opportunities to implement automated testing routines, looking at automatic release management, again to try to really eliminate or reduce the volume of low value manual interventions. How can we look to keep your best staff engaged and motivated beyond remuneration? Great remuneration and the ability to work from home used to be two primary differentiators. Obviously, everybody's now in a position where they're working from home. So I again encourage everybody here on the call to really understand what their high performers are motivated by. Really get into the personal needs of those key contributors, so you can start to mitigate and plan for this war on talent.
And it won't last forever, right? Like that's the other thing. This won't be the way it's going to be forever. Hopefully, like I'm sure, Mike, from your perspective, you're looking forward to getting out of lockdown as well. So it will change, and I think there's that organisations need to have that flexibility moving forwards to understand that change is going to occur and how they're going to manage it moving forward.
I think one of the things there, there's been a lot of discussion on the social channels over the last few months about people still taking time off, even though they may not be in a position to travel outside their own state, or clearly none of us in a position to travel overseas at the moment. But that ability maybe to take a couple of days off, some long weekends, I think is a leadership paradigm. People will follow what the leaders do. So let's look to see how that downtime can be scheduled as we start to come out of lockdown. Keep everybody refreshed and making the best decisions they can moving forward. Let's also not forget it's important to have fun. There's been great stories and anecdotes of wine testings and quiz shows and various fancy dress competitions that we've seen internally at GWI, but also our clients have relayed to us as well. So I think as we go through, these challenging times, it's important again to have some fun as we go through this.
Oh, look, I couldn't agree more. You got to have fun. Otherwise, what's the point in getting up and putting your grown-up clothes on each day if you're in lockdown? I think the other area where we really need to emphasize as well is around, you've already got a lot of the tools to monitor what people are doing. So, this is the period, Mike, to your point, we should be looking at people's leave balances, maybe a little bit more often than, it's not just a have you accrued as much as you need, but for an overseas holiday or who's above the thresholds, just managing those a little bit more, checking in on when people are sending emails and things. There's a fine line, I think, between flexible working and someone feeling obliged to respond to an email at all hours of the day. And you can do that through some various automations in the Office 365 environment. I think that's also a really important thing for leaders to remember. Just because you happen to be working at 10 a.m. or sorry, 10 a.m. hopefully, but at 10 p.m. at night, you don't want that to become the norm for all of your workers as we move forward.
Thanks, Vanessa. Yeah, important points there. So we sort of circle back here and talk about classic program management disciplines, change management and communications. Obviously, in a dynamic where people are in a central location, some of those processes are easier to manage. What's your view on how important, or how do we have to adapt change management and communication plans around key transformation activities, Vanessa, given we're in a slightly sort of different situation now with everybody working remotely?
Oh, look, that's a really good question, because we don't always know if people are listening to us on the end of a video call, right? People can be there, and the best anecdote, of course, that I've heard is the kid who's taken a picture of themselves with the same background and just propped that up for online learning all day. It looks like they're there. All the kids are on mute anyway, so they've gone off to play video games, and obviously that's not the sort of thing that's going to support your digital transformation initiative. Great communications underpins any transformation, and from that perspective, it means just communicate about 10 times more often than you think you need to do it. So if you think that you've told everyone enough, you've not come anywhere near it. You literally have to be able to do it in your sleep, and do it across multiple channels, popping things up on your internal messaging channel, making sure people get emails, sitting with them face to face if you can, and if you can't, one-to-one on video calls, group video calls, making sure your messages are coming through every single opportunity that you have. Is absolutely critical at the moment. We're all bombarded by information at the moment, whether it's looking at case numbers, trying to keep up with our latest TikTok followers, there's so much information out there, and you've just got to, if you're undertaking a transformation project, be really focused on that message. And have someone who can deliver that message. That's not necessarily a technical person, right? If you can get a non-technical resource on site and really enthusiastic about your transformation project, then that is the best resource you have. Because if you're technical, people are often going to say, oh yeah, but you're technical, Vanessa, you know this stuff. And I forever spend my life saying things like, anyone can learn to be technical, just don't be afraid of the technology. And I know that not everyone takes that message on board, but when, say, our marketing coordinator says that instead, people really listen when they say, oh, maybe I can do it, right? Because they can see that person stepping out of their comfort zone. So that's incredibly important.
Yes, I'd come back to the point that you make about getting the business to be part of the messaging and collecting the value stories, collecting the value nuggets as they start to get demonstrated into the organization, sharing tales from the field from a customer perspective. I think that really helps build momentum in terms of really making sure that everyone in the program team is comfortable as to the end goal. Those sort of the value ledger, almost, this is the way I've heard it described.
Value ledger, I like it.
Continues to build through that program. So yeah, collecting stories and getting people from the business or customers to share those stories with the transformation team, I think is part of, again, building that momentum.
And to your point, Mike, make it fun. Like have a quiz about the upcoming project and see how much people remember, and don't make it punitive. Like don't make it we're trying to figure out exactly what the change readiness of the organization is. Like just throw it out there on a Friday and, walk around with a drinks trolley or, a food trolley if you're in the office. If you're virtual, it's a little bit harder, I won't lie. But, just like, what do you know about this? Can you tell me one of the 3 things we're trying to achieve? Can you tell me one of the systems we're trying to decommission? Or even, Mike, you taught me this great game where you ask people to think about the transformation and then describe it as if it was an animal. Like which animal would it be and why? And I think that's a brilliant thing to do, to get people both thinking outside the box as well as getting their honest opinions, because it's a lot harder to hide it if you've got to relate it back to an animal, right?
That's right, and we've seen some amazing creations as we've done that with customers. So maybe let's look at wrapping this up. If we try and distill what we've discussed over the last sort of 15, 20 minutes, Vanessa, what would be some of the sort of key recommendations that you think is important that we share with the listeners now?
Oh, look, for me, the most important thing is evaluate, prioritize, and track. Like use your information and data about your projects to your advantage. Information that's a couple of months old is no good. You want to know what happened last week so you can know, whether to pause, take a 2-week hiatus, send some people on some leave because that's what they need. Don't be afraid to be a little bit critical about what you're doing. It's not personal for me, and remember that the people element, which I know you're particularly passionate about, Mike.
That's right, Vanessa. I think as we touched on earlier on in the session, ensuring that you've identified, the key staff, your key resources, making sure that you adjust your workforce strategy to drive that engagement. You have retention plans in place. You look at cross-training people or find alternate ways to mitigate your risks.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think you're spot on there.
I think there's also, some alternate strategies as well, asking for help. And then we can also look externally to our partner ecosystems as well. And, encourage everybody to reach out and ask to help for their partners as well, specifically where you have time critical deadlines and milestones.
Oh, look, and Mike, that's so important because your partners have probably seen some of it before, right? And seen different ways people have handled it. So if they can give you a shortcut to success, I think that's often as simple as saying, yeah, oh yeah, I saw someone try that and it didn't work. What you want to do is this instead. That's invaluable advice that you should be trying to leverage as much as possible.
Fantastic. Thanks, Vanessa. And yeah, well, let's leave that there. I hope that's been valuable for everybody, and we look forward to hearing your feedback.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Mike. It's been a great chat.